Are you tired of self-doubt holding you back? Have you ever wished you could have the confidence to face your fears, go after your wildest dreams, and the tools necessary to live your best life? Hey there, amazing listeners. I'm your host and author of How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power. And I've made it my mission to help you break free from self-doubt and embrace confidence. Subscribe now and join us as we unlock the secrets to unshakable self-assurance. Let's dive in. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Grasp a Confidence podcast. Just wanted to let you guys know, as you're listening to this podcast today, you're going to have a lot of synergies with my next guest. So many of our listeners on Grasp Confidence podcast are entrepreneurs, or they're thinking about transitioning to entrepreneurship. Maybe they're afraid to jump. Maybe they're not sure what next steps to do. And that's why I brought my next guest on. My next guest is Lisa Edmondson. And Lisa and I met on LinkedIn, as many of my guests do meet on LinkedIn. It's a great place for networking. If you're not on there, I encourage you to go on there. But I met Lisa on there about last year, and we had a really good conversation and got to know each other. And I will let you introduce yourself, Lisa, to our audience.
Okay, thank you. I am Lisa Edmondson. I actually am a, recovering corporate girl. My entire career has been in the corporate space, and I was unexpectedly launched into, the space of solopreneurship. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 2 years, and it's actually worked out for the better for me at this point. So really excited to be having this conversation with you and discussing how confidence plays into that unexpected type of scenario. So thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. You know, the only certain thing in life is change. I've talked about that many of times on my podcast and other live shows. We never know when our lives are going to change. It happens, right? And a lot of times we think, even, we're in a corporate career, we're in that, in that construct of corporate environment, and we think we're in a safe space, don't we, Lisa? It's really easy to think that we're safe and our jobs are secure, but not all of the time, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had been in this job for almost 11 years, and so at that point you think, okay, I'm pretty safe. But really it, quite frankly, depends on the dynamics that you're working in, so a change in leadership, and just like that, Lisa no longer has a job. So it could be something, simple as that, or it could be, the company is having mass layoffs. I know that impacts a lot of people sometimes. So yeah, so it feels like it's a safe space because you get the recurring paycheck, but it's not, it's not a solution, that doesn't have its faults. So it can go either way. But for me, it took me unexpectedly being kicked out of that safe space to, kind of embrace the alternative, which is entrepreneurship.
Wow. Sounds pretty similar to me, although I decided to leave. But yes, it is strikingly similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot. First off, if you get let go, it takes a hit on your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow you have to muster up more confidence, even though you just had a huge hit to it, to go into entrepreneurship. Because, Lisa, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know many other things that take more courage and confidence than being an entrepreneur. Do you?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure this is one of the scariest things I've ever done. But it's working out, And so I think, And it's ironic that you mentioned that too, because when you know, are like me, unexpectedly thrown into the world of entrepreneurship, you know, I kind of had to literally start all over because you know, I had never had any desire to be an entrepreneur, never had any desire to have my own company, you know, so it was just kind of a series of random events that led me to that path. And it was because mostly once I was laid off from my job, you know, I wanted to write about it. You know, I like to write. And so in my head, I was thinking, you know, to help me get through the emotional, you know, turmoil of being let go after that long, I was like, I need to write about it. I need to blog. And then it just kind of led to, well, if I'm going to blog, then I should probably have a website. If I have a website, I should probably have a company, you know? And so it literally was like not a lot of thought put into it. But it was just like in a matter of like 3 days, I suddenly had an LLC and I'm like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? You know? But that's when I started writing my book too. And so, it was a lot of working through, you know, emotions and you know, having to go through that catharsis of getting all of that out of my system first. And that was why I wrote my book, because it was kind of, I knew I needed to, you know, get past that to move on, you know, and not be bitter. And in my head, I was thinking, you know, and I'll get back to corporate someday, you know, and then it just kind of has worked out to where I haven't really gone back to corporate. So, and I'm kind of liking what I'm doing. So it's worked out for me, actually.
So it gives everybody out there a little bit of hope, right? That sometimes, you know, these failures are blessings in disguise. And honestly, a higher version of ourselves kind of comes to the surface when we are faced with certain challenges, obstacles, and hardships, because it forces creative thinking. And I think that is really important. When we think creatively, we can turn that, as you said, you know, you wanted to share your story, you wanted to help other people, and you turned that into the written word, but with blogging and then eventually a website. Mm-hmm. And I know you're an award-winning instructional designer as well. So, you know, you've accomplished great things. But it took some confidence. It took some courage. And again, it's just not easy when you've gotten a hit. Mm-hmm. How did you overcome just putting in the action, putting in the motion? What would you say was something that really helped you gain the confidence to actually pursue this dream?
Yeah. And that's a good question. Because you know, before that happened, I would have never even imagined, you know, that I could even survive something like that, right? You know, you think your life is over, right? I mean, it's like the end of the world. But ironically, I went out to LinkedIn for the first time in, you know, like 11 years. I had joined back in 2011. I joined in 2011. You know, just general, you know, put my name on there, never touched it after that. And so literally, yeah, so this is like 2022. I went out to LinkedIn and I'm like, what's going on in the rest of the world? You know, because you're in your own little bubble when you're in corporate, right? And there's a lot going on out there. And I stumbled across, you know, just a couple of connections that led to more connections and more, you know, and including you. And I think you might have been part of that Social Saturday thing that happened back then. Yeah. And just met lots and lots of people. And so really it was having other people that were kind and compassionate and helpful that kind of restored my faith in humanity, right? Because, you know, at that point you're like, everybody's hateful, everybody's mean, you know, they're just, people are bad. But LinkedIn, the people on there that I came across, they were very kind, very helpful, not self-serving, you know, willing to help you out and that kind of thing. In fact, I think that's how you and I connected, because I think I had a question, you know, about something you had done and you just, you know, kind of offered me your advice. Mm-hmm. And so it was literally like creating a whole new realm of contacts, people that I had never would have met before. Yep. And people that I feel, quite frankly, are really close friends at this point, you know? I mean, these are people that I text, you know, every day and talk to every day. I had lunch with them, one of them a couple of weeks ago, you know, that happened to be local. And so in my head, I'm thinking, I never would have met these people if I hadn't have been let go from that job. And so I'm so grateful for it. But yeah, so surrounding myself with some positive, supportive people, it really made it easy to kind of, get over that whole, it's the end of the world because I lost my job kind of thing, and make me feel hopeful. And then also give me, other possibilities. It's like, have you tried this? Well, what about this? And I know this person, and, let me put you in contact with that person. And so it really was just, having the right people around me. And I stumbled across it, but I'm thankful for it because it's led me, to places that I never, ever would have dreamed of going before. But I'm glad, that I made it there. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I was a part of you having your faith in humanity restored. That makes me feel good.
Right? That's not normal anymore, is it?
It's not, right? But it is possible with the right approach and the right mindset and intention. I believe that. But that's exactly how you and I connected. So you were thinking about writing a book, and I can't remember if I had already published my book or not. I can't remember where the timeline was, but you asked me about just, my general process, and I helped, right? As much as I could. I was very honest. I told you I'm a writer, not an editor. Don't know anything about editing. No clue. Can't do it.
Exactly.
If you pay me to do it, that's a mistake because I'm not good at editing, right?
You were ill-advised.
Very ill-advised. Don't come to me with that. But I can help with marketing. I can help with branding. I can help with just writing process or some kind of strategy. But we help each other, and that's how communities are formed. And you know what? You bring up a really good point that I talk about all the time. So many people think confidence only belongs inside of themselves. And while it does, let me tell you, everyone who's listening right now, it's also your outside environment, the people you surround yourself with, the company you keep. If your outside environment is not conducive for growth, puts you down, makes you feel less than, bullies you, demeans you any kind of way, your confidence, how could it grow?
Right.
How? It's an inside game, but the outside is out as important. It's very much think of yourself as that ecosystem. What you think of internally in your mind counts, just the same as your outside environment. And you and I have very similar stories about being bullied in corporate, not feeling like we're fitting in, feeling almost like a black sheep. And it brought down my confidence tremendously, Lisa.
Yeah, same here. And it's funny because, you don't realize how down you were until you come out of it, Like I had no idea that, I had gotten, and fortunately for me, the turnaround between new boss and, let's get rid of Lisa was about 6 months. So it wasn't like a long, period of being, beaten down into submission. But it definitely, you start questioning, oh, wait, well, maybe I am an idiot. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I've just been faking it for 11 years. What do I know? They're really good at convincing you that you're not qualified, for example. And come to find out, ironically, after I left that company, my main thing was, of course, to figure out how to help others avoid going through what I went through. And, just through a lot of research and everything, because, I know for me, the obvious answer was, let's just go to HR, and I very quickly found out that was not a solution for the employee. And so just, of course, in my research the following year, I call it kind of my year of discovery, because I really just learned so much. And that's, the course that I won the Telly Award for, was about bullying, because I found a solution. I found a methodology through LinkedIn, through a connection, who gave me, the tools and, a way to, kind of deal with it myself. And that was my thing. It's like, how can I personally deal with this in the future if it happens again? And so that was what was important to me, is how can I defend myself? Like, I'm not stupid. I'm pretty sure fairly intelligent person. I should have been able to get out of that scenario, but I couldn't, because I had never been bullied at work before. So I wasn't even aware that I was being bullied, at first, until, afterwards. It's like, oh, that's gaslighting. Oh, that's sabotage. Oh, that's, and so it was literally by the book when it comes to the bullying game. But, for me, someone who'd never been in that position before, I didn't even know what was going on. So, ignorance, is sometimes bliss, but I've learned so much since then. And, so the bullying thing is definitely, obviously a whole other subject area, but for sure it was definitely a year of discovery for me. And I'm just so grateful that I went through that. And, like you said, surrounded myself with people who were positive influences. And because even like your grasp, methodology, the gratitude, I mean, that is so real. That is not anything that I had really ever even heard before. Be thankful for just even everyday little things. And, but just through, this network and, friends and just my research and studies, it's like, find something to be grateful for, find something to be thankful for. Everybody's got something to be thankful for. And just those little things just kind of get you through to the next day and the next day and the next day, and then before you know it, you're, thriving, and, you kind of stumble across success, and, so it just all kind of happens organically if you trust the process. And, like you preach, be grateful for, for what you have, and don't, take it for granted.
Absolutely. It's so fundamental, but you're right. We don't hear it enough.
Mm-mm.
And, I look back, and again, you think about some of your failures and your just mistakes, and why did I do that? Or why did I put up with that? Or, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Would I have changed it? No, honestly, I wouldn't. Yeah, it was hard at the time, but you know what? It made me the person I am today. I couldn't talk about leadership in speeches, for example, if I wouldn't have faced hardships of my own in leadership in the corporate environment. I couldn't speak at a place of experience without that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? It was really hard at the time, but those lessons that we learn along the way are building up to ultimately take us to the place that we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And do the things that we're meant to do, the things that we're really, really good at. Sometimes you have to go through some hardship in order to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. But, if you can have kind of gratitude along the way and kind of like, appreciate those things,
mm-hmm.
it'll take you from a state of lack to a state of gain. And all of a sudden you are gaining confidence.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it takes you from a almost like a finite view that you have of the world, So like I said, I kind of lived in a bubble. I had this, this corporate presence, and, I've been doing that forever. And then, suddenly thrust out into the big wide world, and didn't know the first thing. I mean, I literally had no clue what was happening in the rest of the world, So it was just kind of ironic, but to your point, yeah, like that experience helped me understand, okay, that's what not to do as a leader. So my book is going to be about what you should do as a leader. And that's kind of how that evolved. And so, yeah, it took me a while to finish it, longer than I had intended, but I'm glad it did, because, the first draft was a little bit bitter. And so I fortunately had a very, straightforward editor who also met on LinkedIn. who kind of said, I think this is two separate books, like if you want to tell your story, of being bullied, then that might be one book, but let's focus on leadership on this book. And so, so she kind of helped me, get my mind straight. And then after that, it just kind of, rolled off the tongue, so to speak. So, so it definitely, opened up my eyes to other possibilities out there. So, previously in the corporate world, my goals were, okay, senior director and then vice president. And then where do I go for, and then now in this world, it's like, okay, so I have my own company. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to create this courseware and I'm going to write a script for a movie, which is what I'm doing now. And, so just, yeah. So just things that never would have happened if I had stayed where I was. So yeah. And so much happier with this type of work, because as a leader, and I love being a people leader. I had an amazing team. And again, still very close with them today, still text them all the time. One of them is my best friend now. So, that was a great experience for me and I absolutely don't regret any of it. But yeah, so it, I don't remember where I was going with that. So it led me.
Yeah, that's good though. I mean, it leads you somewhere.
Right.
It's really all about your mindset. I mean, you can take any situation and turn it bad, just like you can take any situation and turn it positive. Mm-hmm. For me in my journey, when I left corporate, I actually had another corporate job already lined up. Mm-hmm. Keys to the building, as they say.
Yeah.
I could have had another one, but what was interesting, it was in a different state. And this was when the housing market started going crazy. Mm-hmm. The interest rates started climbing. Mm-hmm. House prices just went through the roof overnight. So this would have been during 2022, 2021, whatever. Mm-hmm. 2022, I think. Mm-hmm. And I kept failing to secure a house in the area because every time I would go to look at another house, the price would go up $25,000, $30,000, $50,000. And it got to the point where it was out of range and I couldn't do it. And the house I live in now is fine. Like it was, I wasn't like super keen to move and change things. I would have done it, but it just nothing seemed to work. I had this job, it was already lined up, but I couldn't get there. And you know what? I started to realize that it was supposed to happen that way. I wasn't supposed to get there. And if I did, Lisa, I think about this all the time. Yeah. If I had taken that job, I wouldn't have become a writer. I wouldn't have a best-selling book, and I wouldn't have an international TEDx talk. Neither of those two things were at all on my mind in capacity. I would have never imagined myself doing this even just 3 years ago.
Right.
Those failures kept me from a larger failure, which was not realizing my potential and dreams. Holy cow. Think about that.
Yeah, I absolutely can totally relate to that because, and where I was going with my story where I lost my train of thought is, being in a leadership position, you do have a finite, a set of responsibilities that you have to, be responsible for. And so in that role, the creativity that, that I like, was kind of, second, taking a back seat. And so didn't realize that until, again, I was thrown out into the world. And so, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I'm going to create a course and I'm going to create a book and I'm going to, write a movie and, whatever. And so, I absolutely would never have been able to have the opportunity to even do that stuff, even if I wanted to, in that position, because it was just too, it was all consuming. So it definitely unleashed, some things that I had forgotten that I loved to do, And so, I mean, how can that be a bad thing, right? Like, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I like doing that. It's been a while, but, dust off the cobwebs and there you are. And
Yes.
so it's been a joy. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh gosh. And you know what? Don't listen to anyone who tells you that you don't have a skill just because it's not in your job description.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring that up too, because I remember some certain company telling me that they did not think I was qualified to advise them on digital marketing strategies. And then there was another company I worked for that told me I wasn't that copywriting was not in my skill set, that I was a bad writer. I have been told by former managers that I couldn't write an email. Lisa, I had a former manager tell me I couldn't even write an email.
I did too. I did too, literally.
You can't make this stuff up.
No.
You cannot, literally. And just a couple years later now, I'm an international best-selling author. I'm like, you know what? I think you were a little insecure, maybe. Definitely some gaslighting in there, but it didn't. But we kind of internalize those things and actually start to sometimes believe that person's insecurities and their limiting beliefs are somehow our own.
Right. Yeah. Ooh. It backs you into a corner, and especially if it's your direct boss, who's doing that because they are in control of what you can and can't do, And so if they make you feel that, well, you're just not qualified to do this and, you have no recourse. So yeah, it's funny you bring that up about the email. I literally had the exact same.
I've actually gotten told that more than once. So
so you have a real problem, apparently.
Apparently I can't write an email. So I have been told that more than once. And I remember each occasion very clearly because it's just, you're just like bubbling up with anger at that point, right? I remember my old boss standing behind me, watching me type an email and him saying, that is not how you write an email.
Oh, wow.
And I had a former business partner tell me something similar. Obviously gone, right?
Yeah.
So toxicity can happen in entrepreneurship as well. So good thing to pick your business partners, people that really support you, because toxicity can happen anywhere and it'll bring down your confidence in a minute if you let it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard.
Easy.
Yeah.
It's easy.
It's hard to, it's ironic because the toxicity is more powerful, I think, than self-confidence, and so it's almost like hard to, confidence your way out of that category because they're so convincing,
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, they're just so convincing. So yeah. And I think the things you said about partner too in business, of course, I don't, I'm a solopreneur, so I'm not dealing with that. But I just recently spoke with a friend of mine who was in that situation, and their potential partner was kind of undervaluing her before they even, signed the papers. And I was like, I think you bring a little bit more to the table than that. So maybe this isn't the right move for you. But definitely, if someone doesn't appreciate your skills, I mean, you can't, there's no convincing them, there's something internal to them. And so it's a waste of your time to try and, convince them that you are skilled.
Exactly. And let their opinions be their opinions. And you know what? We all have them. But yes, absolutely. Look for those warning signs, those early warning signs. It's really easy to ignore them or brush them off the table or even internalize them and think, you know what, maybe that person's right. Especially if you really admire that person and you look up to that person.
Yeah.
And it really can hurt and become very damaging and lead to depression, anxiety, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. So look for those key warning signs. you're right. If somebody doesn't appreciate you today, when will they?
Right. Yeah. You
Right?
should earn it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to know our worth enough to understand that that is absolutely false and it is their belief system and it has nothing to do with us. I think that's really important. And that's in any relationship, partnership, working relationship, if you're employed at a company, or a personal relationship with a partner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so key. Don't you think?
Yeah. And it's, and it's ironic that confidence is at the underlying, theme there, because it's lack of confidence on their behalf, that ends up, trickling out onto you, questioning your confidence. And so it's just, it's a vicious cycle, as they say.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That is why I developed my signature keynote, which is how to lead confidently. Because what I took from my experience was that while I felt unconfident, you know who's even more unconfident? The least confident person in the world is a bully.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The least confident person. And I put those two together. So confidence is very much personal development. But if you're a leader of people, you have a direct responsibility for those people. And if you're not a confident leader, you know what that also leads to? Not just bullying, not just gaslighting and things like that, but it also leads to you not training people.
Yeah.
You're intimidated and afraid that they will surpass you. Yeah. And it leads to a lot of other things that a lot of times we don't think about, we don't talk about, but until you can be a leader of one, you can't be a leader of many. And my mission with this book and helping, businesses is to have confident leaders, genuinely confident leaders that instill confidence in their team.
Yeah. And I think that's where your message and my message kind of coincide, because my, most of my book is about, we have a different definition of people leaders in the world than we should have, So, for example, I think we find a lot of people leaders nowadays are, the best orator, or the best the salesperson, or the best marketer, and those are all great, but that's not what we should be looking for in people leaders. And specifically, people leaders, really the most successful are the ones that are humble, authentic, honest, have integrity, those kind of things, and enough confidence to not be afraid to not be the smartest person in the room. Like if you're a people leader and you're the smartest person in the room, then you're probably doing something wrong, unless you inherited your team. But, you should be hiring people who are smarter than you, right? Because that's how we learn as leaders. And so that was something that I had, without being taught, I guess, somehow organically, led that way, and just learned a lot from my own team. And I had zero turnover. So I worked with them for years, some of them almost a decade. And they taught me just as much as I taught them. And that was one of the main things is, I mean, I am not the smartest person in the room. That's why you're here. You're here to help, help fulfill, these other areas where I'm lacking, and we can learn from each other. And so, so people leaders who feel like they do have to be, the authority on everything, you're going to fail. I mean, there's no way you can't live up to your own, vision of what you think a people leader is if you feel like you have to be, the smartest person in the room, or, the best at, whatever it is you're leading. So, yeah, it was definitely another area for which I felt passionate about, and why, my company, my company is named Leadership Reno, which was basically, again, no thought, no forethought put into that. It was basically more about thinking, okay, we need to renovate the type of leaders that we have out in the world today. We're doing it wrong.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so that was part of my messaging. But, again, you and I kind of violently agree in that forefront. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
I love that. Well, I think everyone took away a lot of really good information today. And there's going to be a lot of people that really resonate with this message.
Mm-hmm.
This is a message, specifically talking about corporate and working for somebody else. This is intercontinental. This is any country, any language, any culture, any company has these same issues. I've never run into a company that is immune to this type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's extremely relevant to anybody across the world. And I think, I know a lot of people are going to walk away inspired and hopefully motivated to believe that they are made for more, especially if they're being belittled or bullied in a work environment. Trust me, it's not worth it. And you are. So you know what? You are worth it.
Yes. Grasp confidence.
Yes. But thank you so much, Lisa, for being a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone who's listening right now. Please share this episode. Rate this episode. Did this episode help you? Did it add value to your life? Let us know. Send me some reviews. Let me know which episode you liked. If there's a specific guest you'd like me to have back again for conversation number 2, I want to hear from my listeners. So let's start a conversation that goes across the globe and keep this confidence wave spreading. Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Grasp Confidence. Thank you for joining me today and investing in yourself. Remember, building confidence is an ongoing journey, and each step you take brings you closer to the empowered, fearless version of yourself that you were born to be. Don't forget to visit my website, follow me on social media, and purchase my book, which is available on Amazon. Thank you for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Stay confident.